minus 40. That's the wind chill where exposed skin freezes in minutes, and where millions of Canadians still commute, shovel driveways, and walk their kids to school. 90% of households in Manitoba own a complete cold weather survival layering system. Fewer than half of Americans tell FEMA they feel prepared for any serious emergency. That gap traces back to 7 quiet habits embedded in everyday Canadian life. The first one starts before anyone steps outside. Every winter morning, millions of Canadians reach for a base layer before they even glance at the forecast. The logic is as old as the land itself. Start with a thin moisture-wicking shirt or merino wool, add an insulating fleece or down mid-20th century layer, and finish with a windproof, waterproof shell. This 3-layer system is not a trend or a mountaineer's trick. It is a baseline expectation in places where wind chills of minus 40 degrees Celsius or even minus 50 degrees Celsius can strike without warning. Public health campaigns in Manitoba and Quebec repeat the same advice every season. Skip a layer and you risk losing heat 2 to 3 times faster. In these provinces, well over 80% of households report using a full layering system when temperatures drop below minus 20 degrees Celsius. That habit is reinforced by retail data. Outdoor stores in Winnipeg and Montreal consistently sell more thermal base layers and insulated shells per capita than in any US city, even those with cold winters. This approach has deep roots. Indigenous communities passed down the principle of layered protection long before synthetic fabrics existed. And by the mid-20th century, layering became standard curriculum in prairie high schools. Today, the system is so ingrained that it shapes daily routines. Commuters keep spare socks and mitts in their cars, parents send children to school with labeled layers, and even city bus drivers check for proper dress before letting kids board during cold alerts. Contrast that with the United States, where the 3-layer rule is known but not universal. FEMA survey data shows only about half of Minnesotan households own a full set of cold weather layers, with national numbers far lower. For many Americans, a winter coat and jeans feel sufficient until a stalled car or sudden blizzard proves otherwise. In Canada, the lesson is simple. Survival starts with what you put on before you step out the door. A Canadian winter road trip is never just a drive, it's a calculated risk. In provinces like Manitoba and Quebec, where minus 40 wind chills can sweep in with little warning, the family car becomes a mobile lifeboat. Provincial transport ministries issue checklists that read more like expedition manifests than casual reminders. A thermal blanket, extra mitts, a compact shovel, jumper cables, a flashlight with spare batteries, high-calorie food bars, bottled water, a first aid kit, reflective triangles, traction mats, and a portable phone charger. The full list runs to 20 items, and in many households, these supplies stay in the trunk year-round, not just for long trips, but for every commute. Winter tires are another non-negotiable. Quebec's law requires them from December 1st to March 15th. Compliance hovers near 98%. The reason is simple. Transport Canada's controlled tests show that a car on winter tires stops 14 meters shorter than one on all seasons when braking on ice. That is the difference between a safe stop and sliding through an intersection or into a snowbank. In British Columbia, winter tires are mandatory on mountain highways, while Manitoba and Alberta push for high voluntary adoption through public campaigns and insurance incentives. The stakes are real. In February 2022, a family traveling between Quebec City and Saguenay was caught in a sudden blizzard. Stranded for hours, they used their emergency kit, a shovel to clear the tailpipe, reflective triangles to flag down help, and high-energy snacks to keep children warm and alert. The story made the news not because it was rare, but because their preparation turned a life-threatening ordeal into an uncomfortable wait. Americans may recognize the idea of a car kit, but FEMA compliance surveys show only about 45% of US drivers keep even a basic set. In Canada, the habit is not about over-preparing. It's about making sure that if the engine dies or the highway closes, survival is not left to chance. In Canada, a house is more than shelter. It is engineered survival. When temperatures drop to minus 40 degrees or lower, and the grid falters, the difference between discomfort and disaster can be measured in hours. The National Building Code of Canada requires frost-protected water lines in most of Manitoba, Alberta, and Quebec. This is not a theoretical concern. In February 2021, a Manitoba family faced a 48-hour outage during a polar vortex. Their furnace cut out, and the outside temperature hovered near minus 35 degrees. The family sealed off unused rooms, gathered in the living room, and relied on a portable propane heater with a carbon monoxide detector. Because their home had frost-protected piping, insulated and equipped with heat tape, the water kept flowing, even as neighbors reported burst pipes and flooded basements. Across the country, battery-powered heaters, insulated pipe sleeves, and backup generators are not luxury items. In rural Alberta, more than 60% of homes report having at least one secondary heat source, and municipalities run rebate programs for heat tape kits and certified propane heaters. Municipal advisories urge residents to keep pipe insulation up to date and to know the signs of freezing, slow water flow, or a sudden drop in pressure. When power fails in minus 30 degrees, unprotected pipes can freeze solid in 2 hours, and a ruptured line can make a bad situation unlivable. These measures are not about comfort. They are about making sure a family can last through a 24-hour or even 48-hour blackout without risking hypothermia or losing access to clean water. In the United States, backup heating and pipe protection are often left to individual choice, and building codes rarely require frost protection outside the far north. In Canada, the expectation is clear. Every house must be ready to stand alone against the cold. 72-hour emergency kits are not an afterthought in Canada. They are a national benchmark, reinforced by Public Safety Canada and echoed in every provincial campaign. The official checklist reads like a survival blueprint: 4 liters of water per person, 3 days of high-calorie, non-perishable food, a hand crank radio, an LED flashlight with spare batteries, first aid supplies, a multi-tool, and a thermal blanket rated for minus 30 degrees Celsius. Each item is chosen for a reason. In the prairies, where a blizzard can knock out power and close roads for days, the difference between a thermal blanket and a regular one can be the difference between shivering and surviving. The kit also includes extra clothing, a snow shovel, and a compact tarp for emergency shelter. Components rarely found on basic American lists. Survey data shows a clear divide. 63% of Canadians report keeping a complete 72-hour kit at home, compared to less than 45% of Americans who say they feel prepared for any disaster. FEMA's own numbers put 3-day food and water supplies in only 38% of United States households. The gap is not about fear, it is about expectation. In Canada, the 72-hour kit is taught in schools, promoted in public service ads, and quietly checked off each autumn as part of getting ready for winter. The question is not whether you have one, but whether yours is up to the standard. For many Americans, it is a new idea. For Canadians, it is just another part of surviving a climate where help may be hours or days away. When temperatures plunge below minus 20 degrees Celsius, a phone call or a knock on the door can mean the difference between a quiet night and a medical emergency. In Alberta and Quebec, volunteer-run programs like Winter Watch and Cercle de Voisinage activate as soon as the mercury drops. Neighbors check on seniors, deliver hot meals, and make sure everyone's heat is working. These aren't isolated gestures. They're part of a system. Canada maintains about 22 search and rescue volunteers for every 100,000 people, compared to just 13 in the United States. In rural towns, it is common for a volunteer to be on call for 2 or more households when extreme cold alerts go out. The trigger is often a forecast of minus 20 degrees Celsius or lower, and the calls continue until the cold snap breaks. But survival in the cold isn't just about warmth. Health Canada advises a liter of water every 2 hours of outdoor activity, even when you're not thirsty. Cold, dry air pulls moisture from the lungs with every breath. That's why electrolyte drink sales spike 35% in January across Manitoba and Quebec. Outdoor workers and parents alike stock up on calorie-dense snacks, oatmeal, nut bars, even butter tea, because the body burns through energy faster just to keep warm. These habits Neighbor check-ins, volunteer rescue networks, and a focus on hydration and calories form a safety net that stretches far beyond any single kit or checklist. When the forecast warns of -35, school districts across the prairies reach for a hard stop. Classes close, buses are parked, and families shift into home mode. That threshold is not just a bureaucratic line, it is a recognition of what the cold can do to an unprepared person. Yet, for many Canadians, the skills to handle that kind of weather start young and run deep. More than 12,000 people, from scouts to seniors, sign up each year for wilderness survival courses through organizations like Mountain Equipment Co-op and Parks Canada. These sessions cover more than lighting a fire or building a snow shelter. They build habits that stick. Search and rescue incident reports show that 42% of successful rescues in Canada involve someone who has had formal wilderness training, compared to just over a quarter in the United States. That difference is not luck. It is a result of a culture where fire starting, shelter building, and basic navigation are seen as ordinary skills, not hobbies. Even outside the backcountry, the routine is clear. Every morning, millions of Canadians check the Environment Canada forecast before heading out. In places where a sudden cold snap can mean the difference between a safe walk and a life-threatening emergency, weather monitoring becomes as automatic as locking the door. The question that lingers is simple. If the temperature dropped to -35 tonight, would you know what to do next? Today, temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius are routine for millions of Canadians, yet many Americans still treat winter as an afterthought. Climate doesn't negotiate, and survival isn't seasonal. As storms grow stronger, ordinary habits become life or death lines. The real question, how prepared are you if the grid fails tonight?